Good evening. It's April 29th. We're in the Tom Baker Room of the City County Building. It's 5:15. This is a special meeting of the Board of City Commissioners. We'll call the meeting to order first. If we can call roll.
Commissioner Risch.
Here.
Commissioner Zinker.
Here.
Commissioner Connolly.
Here.
Commissioner Cleary.
Here.
Mayor Schmitz.
Here. We have two items on the agenda. They're not necessarily in any particular order. So first I'll ask if there's a desire to change the order as to how they're shown or not.
I was going to request that we flip-flop them. I guess as I was going through them, I feel like as much as I feel like I have a good understanding of the CIP, it's hard for me to make a decision on that without discussing management first, I guess, and seeing where everybody's at with the management discussion. But that's just my thought that I was having when I was going over everything.
I never picked which order it
Right.
went, so.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Then if that's okay with everyone else, we will we'll flip the order on the agenda and start with the management operations study that was prepared by JLL. Before we get started with that, I just want to give some comments. I've received a few questions and certainly want to make sure we cover some things. The first thing is I think we have to determine, can we be status quo with how we're operating? And if that's one answer. And I don't know if I have consensus on that or not, but that doesn't mean there's a change per se, but we have to change the way we're operating. So it doesn't necessarily mean you change management, it's change the way we're operating. And the reason I feel that way is the event center is an amenity for the community to use, but it needs to also attract people into town so we generate sales for our local hotels, restaurants, bars, and which generates tax revenue, which supports the event center. Because the event center is not going to operate at a profit. It would be lovely if we could say it could get there, but from a cash flow standpoint, to do enough events, we'd probably have to have every square foot of the building filled 90% of the time at full rental value, and that's probably not realistic, just because of turning over different types of events. We still need to support local reoccurring events at the same time, but we probably have been a little bit reversed in that we've primarily filled the building recently, maybe forever, with mostly reoccurring kind of local events and not attracting a bunch of out-of-town clientele to the event center and to our community. That means it's a different type of event mix, which JLL has said to us, we need to change our event mix. So kind of a way to look at it, just because we're busy doesn't mean we're always being successful. So I'm sorry, I meant to hand these out, Commissioners. It's my fault. So these are just notes that I put together, so bear with me. And they're in no particular order, and that they're not meant to make anything necessarily a direction. It just, as I went through the proposals and as I listened to people in the community, it's things I wrote down. So what are some expectations we need to set? What kind of KPIs do we need to put in place so that we feel that the event center can then run at a more effective, I'll call it operating loss, one that we can cover by the enhanced economic output from the rest of our community, and what's that result? By filling that primary purpose of attracting some out-of-town people into our event center who would be even lovely to say multiple day stays, because that puts people in hotels. That then provides economic development to the city, and it provides additional sales tax revenue, which goes to support the event center and also a whole bunch of other stuff in the city. I truly believe that the review that was done by JLL was not a review on the staff itself. We have a staff that does a lot of really, really good work, but I don't know that they have the tools necessary at the moment to be able to do what we need to accomplish in the event center. It is it is not uncommon for us to use outside consultants to help us achieve our goals. How we get there, that might be a whole different story. I know there's been concern raised that staff would lose jobs. That's in our control. If we develop an RFP, we can develop in that RFP what those requirements are. And if they don't meet the RFP, we don't do anything. But in addition to that, what I have learned in doing some research is in most cases, those team members that we currently have are offered an opportunity to go work for that company. But I also will tell you, we probably have positions in other departments in the city that may be very good fits for some individuals who may say, hey, I don't want to do that. I can go over to Department A, B, or C, or D and retain all of their existing benefits. The other thing is in the RFP, I would expect that we would require that the proposal put together a package that is similar to what, not exact, but offer reasonably similar compensation in some form or another to what they currently have today. A comment was made to me that using a third-party vendor might send profits out of town. Well, maybe, but if they bring in a whole bunch of other business to town and increase our economic base, that's a win for the city of Bismarck. And that's really a win for our constituents, the taxpayers. The city commission will not lose local control. If we look at how we can put this together, no matter what we do, I still think we need to change our operations, and I think we probably need to really seriously consider an authority board. It's not an uncommon practice for this type of a venue, because that gives more flexibility so that when there's an event that comes into this event center and wants to do something in a manner that's different and not on our rack sheet and doesn't meet our insurance requirements that we have to live with as a city, we can put something in between there. That's what a third-party vendor can do also. It gives more flexibility as to what can come into this event center, what they have insurance, whether they have the same insurance coverage our city requires or not. We're not handing the keys over. We are still very much in control if we do it right. I would not be inclined to do that. We need to maintain the facility. And the facility is a great facility, in my opinion, located in almost one of the better spots in town. And to replicate that facility anywhere else doesn't fix our problems, and it costs us a whole bunch of money. I think I can ask Jeff Wubel roughly what that number would be. It's a big number. So that leads to why the capital improvement plan is important as well, because we need to take care of that facility. And so that's just some thoughts I put together to help us be thoughtful in this process. I do not know that there's a right or a wrong answer necessarily. I think we have to look at what's best for the community from what we can see and what evidence we've been provided. JLL does this all the time, so I don't think we're talking to somebody who doesn't know what works and doesn't work. And so that's just some thoughts, and I just felt it was fair for me to write those down so I could share for you, and hopefully others have some thoughts as well that we could share before we really kind of get into discussions. So I open the table up. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, I concur with you. We need to do something different. I reread the Smith report from last year. Gordy Smith, the former state auditor, or one of the auditors up there, it was pretty damning. It was pretty shocking, the Smith report. So certainly things have to change. My one concern is we had a manager that didn't do things right, obviously, and Smith pointed out some of those shortfalls. But I don't think all the employees should have to pay for one manager's mistake. So I'm concerned about that aspect of it. There's good city employees, solid, decent people, and I want to make sure they're treated right.
Totally concur. Others? Go ahead, Commissioner. I'm sorry, I turned away.
I guess I agree with everything that's been said so far. As I was going back through the JLL report, I think, like you mentioned in Gordy's report, and Commissioner Connolly and I participated in that committee with him when he wrote that. But JLL mentions it too, like there is a cost to doing nothing. So I think that that's the other thing we need to resonate, like regardless as to what we change, I think something needs to change because otherwise we jumped through all of these hoops. The committee from last year, both of these agenda items are on our table. Like if the solution that we come to is let's leave it how it is, rehire the director position. I just don't know, when you look at the KPI and there's a slide in the JLL report of just things that the operation findings and the list, he's got 9 main ones, but he has that bullet point list on the other side. Like, that's a lot for hiring one new director to have to like work through and make staff adjustments. I think that like, if we can come to some kind of middle ground conclusion that where we're making more changes to the operations, I don't think that it, to the mayor's point, means that staff is going to be losing their jobs, that all of a sudden we're going to be letting go of all these local events. Like, that was one of the things that has been brought up to me over the course of the last week, is that the way the JLL report was interpreted by some of the user groups that are local, I think kind of more specifically at the Bell too, is that the JLL report talks a lot about focusing on those like 7,000 attendant big arena events and how those are needed. And I just think that if we can figure out which model works for us, just up front, I do like the concept of an authority because I think it gives us the ability to dictate like that those events are important to this community too, whether they be concerts or basketball tournaments, that like that they're a huge piece of what goes on down there and that the public doesn't want to lose those. But I do think that we can make changes and still achieve that. So I guess that was kind of where my head was at. I do think too that there's something to be said about not doing anything when it comes to just the general economic development of the spaces around the event center and the core. I think that if you were to ask one of the multiple people that are sitting here that work on economic development, whether that's Brenda or Sherry or whoever, like, is the process that we're going through right now stalling people from investing private dollars on private lands around the event center because they're waiting for things to happen? They want to see how the city handles this, and they want to see how it can grow and become better before they put their dollars into Bismarck. I think there's some of that too. So that's kind of the things that were rolling around in my head as I was going back over it. So I just wanted to like state a few of those things. I think too, just to reference, the authority model too that is talked about, in the breakdowns of models, it's very comparable to, I mean, obviously very different, but very comparable structurally to the parking authority. So it's not something that we're not doing. Having like an authority board or like an oversight board is something that the city already does in other capacities. So I think that there's a lot to be discussed, and I don't know if I have the right answers, but I think that that's kind of where I would like to start.
Commissioner Zinker?
Well, I've given it a lot of thought, obviously, and I've stated my opinion already on the third-party thing, but the more I think about this, I think we got to look at this from a much, much broader perspective. Obviously, we all use tools to gather information, personal contacts, whatever, social media. You can talk about, hey, if we invest money into the event center, now it's a waste of money. You could tear it down, build a new one, I think what you alluded to earlier. I think we need to look at this from a totally different perspective, and a less conservative approach than what we've used typically from the city of Bismarck. In our previous strategic plan, we were considered the facilitator. There are many, many things that we need within our city. And it's not just what the city needs, it's what the county needs, what parks needs, what schools need. And this could be, I think it's time for a generational type change, where we just not only invest into our event center, but we sit down with parks, we sit down with Burley County, and we sit down with schools, and we come up with our citywide strategic plan as to what we think that we need to move forward. I mean, if you can talk to any athletic group, and I'll stick to the sports sides of things because that's who I am and who our family is. I mean, from baseball fields to golf courses to basketball courts to hockey arenas, every group that you talk to will talk about things that we don't have enough of. You can talk to people who travel to Sioux Falls and Fargo and Grand Forks to play those sports and other types of sports. And there's other things in sports out there. I totally get that. But this is part of it, right? This is a critical piece because we want things to come in. It's not big enough event center to bring in Taylor Swift and those other bigger concerts. You talk about it's a 10,000 seat arena, but really from a concert perspective, it's really only about 7,200, right? So when JLL talks about, hey, big ticket items, we can only seat so many people that we can seat in there. And I think we all agree that we got to change something, right? So the first thing that I would do if I was us, I would take this report, summarize this report, and see what we need to change, and then write those things down and move forward and give that to our team and make sure that we're moving forward. The second thing we need to do is we need to bring those groups together that I talked about from a generational perspective and make changes within our city. And we need help. We need those business type people to do this. We need help with the city, or with the state, so we can get the interchange done on 66th. So we don't become the second fiddle to a Fargo, Grand Forks, and Sioux Falls. We become the primary focus. So we get those types of events that come to our city, whether it's a sporting thing, a convention, or whatever it might be, so we can generate those sales tax dollars. And that's the dynamic of change that I think we need to take here. We're going to have some conversations. We're going to do some different things, whether we all agree with them or not. But I think we really need to focus on and drive home that we need to put our other government entities together, and we need to become that generational change starting today.
And Commissioner, I also can't disagree with that. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think there are concepts that can be helpful to generate those other things, but we're going to need other partners. It can't just be the city of Bismarck, just like you said.
But we can facilitate, and we are the capital city, and sometimes we need to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Sorry, but so we are. I'm a really competitive guy. If we're going to, I go home to my dinner table, I have no problem having a ton of competition with my kids. I love it. It's great. And I think we have to have that same mentality when we talk about business perspective and city stuff, that we're competing. We know we're competing with other cities to bring whatever that is to our city. And we gotta change our philosophies, and we gotta change our ultra conservative approach and take a chance. I had many conversations with the previous director, and at that time the commissioner that held the finance portfolio, about what kind of risk did we want to take to bring certain acts to the city. And those are big risks, because you got to have a conversation about whether you're going to take a performer and pay them their guarantee of $1.5 or $2 million just to get them here, and then hope that you make a couple dimes at the end. Now, a couple of those things fell through, and one we didn't pursue. But if we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna talk about putting multi-millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars into this facility, then we need to pony up, and we need to give the tools that we have to our staff and our group of people, and I'll include administration and finance in there, to give them a direction. And I'll take a ton of responsibility in this, because when I took the portfolio and I saw the financials and I saw what was going on, I said the only way that we can make this work is if we put butts in the seats and heads in the beds. Referencing back to hey, we gotta rent this place out and do that. If that's the wrong approach, fine. I'll admit it, and we'll move on. I don't have a problem with that. If we want to change the dynamics of what we're doing, then we got to give clear and concise direction to our teams.
Thank you.
What else? There's a tall soapbox. I'm a short guy.
Oh, we all have our soapboxes. Commissioner Conley.
Commissioners, Mayor and Commissioners, that's the biggest thing with that. Since 2012, a big part of all of the discussion that goes on is community buy-in. And we don't have the support of the community right now, and they're a little bit shy about coming out of the gate and getting behind something. But I'm okay with being competitive and going out there and trying to see if we can't bolster that up, because it's a lot easier to do big things when you got people into it. Say the Sports Center, Park 365, they did a lot of work for 2 years. And then they just expected, because they did work, that the community would buy in. And that one fell flat. And that was a really big push. I think we need to do strives to where we get more community buy-in, so we're all working towards a common goal instead of playing these odds against one another. This has been a long discussion for a long time. And I think there's ways that that can do, but it's going to take a little bit more knocking on doors instead of certain stakeholders and certain groups working on things. But to go out there to the community, because a lot of the community, they're doing everything they can just to put food on the table.
So I want to bring the conversation's all good, and I don't disagree that we need to be bold as a community as a whole, but we also need to take care of the facilities we have and make sure we get those operating in the manner we can, or it's not going to do any good to be bold. But I do want to follow up on it, because Commissioner Zinker brought up a point, and I want to follow up with Dan Fenton, because one of the questions I would have is, if we were to use a third-party vendor to manage, who takes the risk? Dan, if you can help me on this, who takes the risk on that big event that maybe has a $1.5 million guarantee up front? And can we define our RFP that that's the entity that's taking the event, but then have our expectations?
Yeah, Mayor, let me answer it a couple of ways. One is, we always got to remember that the management companies are just that. They're management companies, right? They're not necessarily owners in that true sense. So there certainly could be relationships established with them when it comes to taking risks on concerts. That we've definitely seen that, but that would have to be part of what we all would determine were key priorities for us. So that could be part of the arrangement. And I just, Mayor, like to ask one other thing and really sort of agree with some of your comments and really everyone's comments here. And that is that if we contemplate this notion of whether it is a third-party manager or it's the notion that things have to change, the key here is that all of those priorities, and we'd shown you some examples of KPIs, that regardless of direction, that we are all focused on, what's right for us. So if we were to pursue take the process and pursue a third-party manager, we were certainly not advocating that be done just without any, if you will, really critical prioritization in terms of what we want to see that manager do and what we want to make sure they're focused on, including the employees and the preservation of the employees, and all of that needs to be part of how we would structure that approach. So we believe that if that is the direction that the council wants to go, it's not just let's do that. It's let's think about that in conjunction with all the priorities that everybody has really mentioned right now need to be part of the process, and really tailor it so that everybody could look at this and say, yeah, those are specifically the priorities that are important to us.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, Dan, I've got a question about how, if we went with a third-party manager, how are they compensated? It's a percentage basis, a straight fee?
Great question.
How's that work?
Yeah, there's usually, and again, I'm going to always say usually, because we would want to make sure we structure it in the best interest of what everybody feels good about. Usually there is a base fee of some number, and then there is an incentive. And let me just take a moment on the incentive. We believe strongly that incentive needs to be based on, again, those priorities that everybody has been talking about today. So it's not just an incentive based on, top line revenue or bottom line net income. It's an incentive that takes into account how have we delivered on the priorities that many of you have spoken about right now? And so we have structured agreements in the past where some of those KPI samples we showed you, those are specific, they're specific sort of achievables that, number one, the third party has to respond and tell us how they're going to achieve those things, and two, that's how they're going to, basically that's how they're going to receive incentives. Is all of these sort of things that we talked about have to be part of it. And I'll stop here, but I just want to say one thing, because if it's just about profit and loss, then we may not end up with that mix of business that we want to end up with, or we may not end up with some of the community benefits that we want to make sure are part of the success of the event center. So that it's typically base plus incentive, but we really advocate for that incentive to be based on a lot of the priorities that we are just discussing right now.
So, Dan, can you, because I think we may all be trying to get our heads around what that last statement,
Okay.
set of statements
Yeah.
said. Like, can you boil it
Yeah.
down to,
Yeah.
I don't know,
If you
a
look at
cleaner
if you
picture?
look at, yeah, if you look at slide, Mitch is with me here too, but there's a slide that I think you have in front of you where we showed you that kind of, there was three sort of quadrants on that slide that showed you different examples of KPIs, right? If you look at that slide, the process that we would go through with the council and with the staff, by the way, and others, would be to take that list as well as maybe add others and end up with a list of KPIs, most of which are measurable, that would be part of how we would define success for the operators to both respond to, and then if one was selected, this would be how they would be guided in terms of priorities and how they go about, supporting the operations of the event center. So if you look at, I'm just putting it up here. If you look at slide, what is it?
Looks like 17.
Slide 17, you'll see key performance indicators dash sample, right? And if you look at that, the different subjects that are in there, we don't have to use them all, and we think there would be a process with the council of taking this list and then really adding to it, taking away from it, and ending up with measurable KPIs that really define success when it comes to what's important to us. And you'll notice here that example, you'll see event mix. That's not top line revenue. That's are we bringing in the right events? Or things like economic impact, right? Things like this. There's even areas you can see here around sustainability. So there's other community benefit. So there's tangible KPIs that would be part of the RFP in the first place, by the way, because we want to see how the third parties responded to those priorities. And then two, that would be part of how the third party would be incentivized. Is that better, Mayor?
I think so. So then I need to understand, well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner. Thank you.
So, yeah, Mayor, Commissioner, so I got a question on that. So, I mean, obviously, how do you guarantee that you get these KPIs from that third party? I mean, because if you don't.
Great question.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different, right? Third party books so much events or whatever events, or we have staff book it, right? We don't have a guarantee on the staff side of things. So how do you guarantee you get something from the third party?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? And I think the key is how you structure the agreement and how you structure the incentive so that there's real, if you want to call it motive and gain there for doing the things that we all believe are the key priorities, right? I mean, I'm not trying to, this is going to sound negative what I'm saying, but any of these management, agreements also have termination clauses and all sorts of things about, curing if there are things that they are doing that do not meet the standards that we have set. So there are ways to have checks and balances, certainly on third-party managers. But at the same time, I use the word guarantee. Absolutely, there isn't technically a guarantee, but we want to make sure we would structure this so that the council would feel comfortable that we weren't going to bring in someone and just go, well, it's not working, but we have a 5-year agreement or whatever it may be, that there really would be a way to monitor performance. I think that's critical to this because, again, I'm going to repeat myself real quickly, but we're certainly not advocating for a third party just for third party's sake. We're advocating if we're going to go that way, if the council thinks that would be an important direction, then let's do it in a way that really matches the key priorities that we all believe are going to be important here.
Okay, I'm going to follow up with a different question, different line maybe even. So if the third party is operating and there's a team of individuals down there that maybe is every one of them that comes right out of the current event center, however that looks, and we say it's by incentive, what does it look like to the city? How do we operate that? Where's the revenue flow through that comes into the door?
Yep.
And who's paying
Yeah.
the bills? And because I know of another entity, another municipality that's in our state that operates this way, and I've actually looked at their financial statements, and honestly, it gave me I was a little confused by their statements.
Yeah, so remember that every asset, the bank accounts, the balance sheet of the financials, everything is still a city asset. Right? So sometimes people get confused and they'll say, we need to go ask so-and-so if we can do something, or it's almost as if some people confuse an operator with an owner, right? They don't have any, there are no assets that are in the event center or, any of the, when it comes to the balance sheets or anything it's still all absolutely all public. They're all city assets because the management company is managing those assets on behalf of the city. They don't own the assets, right? So, and that's an important piece because I think, Mayor, you or one of the council members mentioned, we don't want to sort of quote unquote lose control. We don't want to, sort of hand over the keys. We're not handing over the keys, right? We're bringing them in to operate and support our team in a manner that we have developed and we've shown them in terms of what we all believe are the priorities for them. That really needs to be how the relationship is structured. I don't know if that helped.
Maybe. I'm not sure if it does, but I maybe get my head around it. So then, is there a concept in whereby the third party is, I'll use the term general manager or director, but that's it. They're giving guidance to the current existing city staff who is in the building, but those staff are not employed by the third party.
Yeah, we have looked at this, what you're saying, Mayor, in other situations, and we never want to say never. So I don't want to say never. What we've run into in kind of the scenario you're talking about is the notion of private managers, right, managing public employees, right? And so, could there be a model there? We believe, in theory, there absolutely could be. There would be some things to really work through there, just to make sure that was functional. But we do not want to rule out something like that as an outcome. But there are some details, and I'm sure City HR and some others, we have to really think through some details there. But I wouldn't necessarily rule out that. We would just have to really think through what the mechanics would look like there.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Rich.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Dan, that's a concern of mine. These people have got a lot of time invested in their pensions, got health insurance benefits, things of that nature. And I don't want to jeopardize that for the bulk of the employees at the event center.
Yep. And I'll just say this: we absolutely violently agree here, and we think that part of that is everything everybody's talking about. We need to think through. If tonight, I know everybody doesn't vote tonight, but if tonight the council says, okay, let's keep going here, we would view that as a key part of coming back to sort of finalize this. Would be to look at the questions that you're asking. So we're totally with you on, how do we create something where we can protect things like, especially some of the team members that have been here a long time and they're, maybe there's relatively short-term prior to quote unquote retirement. I think all of that should be part of how we really finalize how we're going to approach this. So we're in violent agreement here. I'll just say that.
Commissioners, other inquiries? Go ahead, Commissioner Clary.
Dan, if you could, could you talk a little bit more about, like, when you broke down the different models that were reviewed in the project with the authority board concept?
Yep.
Like, can you talk about what that's looked like in your past experience as far as like
Yeah.
who sits on that board, who, does the commission appoint them?
Yeah.
How does that work in kind of comparison to the other boards that we have?
Yep.
And then how they interact with the third party and like what
Yep.
that's looked like in other areas
Yep.
that you've done it in?
Yeah, it's a great question, by the way, because that's a great example of if everything you've just asked isn't sort of thought through, you could end up in a situation where it's not a particularly effective sort of governance model, right? So let me just go through a few things here and talk about some different aspects of what you just asked. One, we absolutely believe that the authority board needs to be selected in a way that we know we are bringing skill sets on that board that can, in fact, provide the kind of support and guidance that we want that board to provide, whether it's to the operator or to the internal team, whatever the final sort of outcome is here. So the selection approach as to who's on that board is critical, number one. Number two, we have seen both government appointed and sort of self-nominated. And I think the key there is, if it is going to be government appointed, we really have to have some very, very solid criteria that the council agrees to as to, again, sort of who we are looking for on that board. If it's self-nominated, there's similarities there in terms of making sure the bylaws, for example, clearly state, again, who the type of leaders that we're trying to bring on that board are. And then the board has to have real authority. So they have to have the ability, for example, if it's a third party, they have to have the ability to say to the third party, if you're in breach, we believe you're in breach, you need to cure the breach, and we have the authority to oversee how you are doing based on what's been agreed to in your contract. They need to have the ability to look at reports, to look at data, and to have the responsibility, there's almost a fiduciary piece here too, of them being stewards of the event center. So that, if we were writing up for everybody, kind of that, the board duties, if you will, or, board responsibilities, we would want all of this to be built in so that the key here is that the council knows that board has that, that's what they're overseeing, that's what they're looking at, that's what they're responsible for. And then, of course, they report to the council also on results. But that board has to have authority. If it doesn't, it really slowly becomes an advisory board only. And we have watched where those advisory boards become less and less effective. So we need to write up in the development of that board and the development of the authority that they have authority, to, make decisions, take action. They have a fiduciary responsibility, which I think is critical to the council. And those parameters need to be part of how the board is formed and then what their charge is.
So Dan, no matter how we move forward, I'm not sure that we have all the skills sitting here at the table to even develop it. What, I mean, can your firm or could your firm be available to help develop, even if it's, I'm just go, it's the authority board and we stay with basically the same setup we are now, but we have authority board in between it, because I think that's, regardless, a very important component.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to work with the council on writing that up and really developing that in a way that everybody feels comfortable with, again, what their priorities are, what their responsibilities are, how the accountability works. Absolutely.
And then would that authority board, if put in place, then be the board that does the hiring of, let's use the current setup, the event center director?
Yeah, one of the key, and this again, we think through this together, but one of the key pieces when we've been doing this is making sure that if we go that route where we bring in a new executive director, general manager as part of the outcome here and figure out how to structure that to still, I think the council all agrees that there, things have to change. So how do we structure that so things are going to continue to move forward? Yeah, that board needs to have the oversight of that executive director / GM so that she or he really sees them as the one that is really helping guide them and helping oversee, sort of how they're doing.
Yes, go ahead.
So, let me just throw this out there, because I could support this. If there's a governing board that, and we hire a director, and basically, instead of 5 of us trying to run the thing, we have 7 people who know what they're doing when they're running this type of thing, and it would keep the staff, and that's all. And I would think that at least if we go, I'm just spitballing here, so bear with me. We have 7 people on that board. 2 of them, one would be the portfolio holder, the other one would be the city administrator. Did you like that, Jason? I volunteered you. And then 5 other people who have a makeup or maybe knowledge of how events run, or a network of people type thing, right?
Yep.
And then they have their list, because we've already obtained a list of what we want fixed, and they're in charge to make sure that happens. And then us as a commission would have to make sure we give them the tools to get that done. I could support that, because that would leave the third party out of it. Yes, there'd be a governing board, which has more know-how to operate it, and then we would keep our city employees.
I'm going to take that one step further than just following along your line, Commissioner. I'm not opposed to necessarily. I'm not sure that's exactly where I'm at, but I'm not opposed to it. But we would still need to have someone help that board develop the job description for the director, because I do not feel we do not have the knowledge anywhere in our room or in our operation to do that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I think that's part of the piece.
Right, that would be the
maybe
foundation.
Yeah, that maybe becomes the reason the third party was of interest to me, because I don't know where we have the tools to even hire that person.
Yeah. They're still under contract.
Right, and so you understand where I'm not necessarily in disagreement, Commissioner Risch.
I like the idea of the board, certainly. But my concern is, I don't know if there's somebody out there that can fill this position. Is there somebody that good that can come in and actually do it, run it as a director that can turn this thing around? That's what leads me to say, well, maybe we can have some parameters on a third-party contractor with the expertise, have the board, and the parameters would be that we keep as many employees as we can. And in my personal opinion, they'd be city employees with the same fringe benefits and pay that they receive now. But that outside third-party contractors, there's experts involved there. We put out a notice for somebody to fill the position to head up the event center. I don't know if we're going to get a good enough candidate. Good enough candidate.
I don't know that. So, I mean, that's why we're talking, like, we need to do something. What is it that we need to do? I do not know that. I mean, that's why we're having this conversation. Commissioner Conley.
I don't think we know unless we allow the opportunity to ask the question. And that we can turn it down, we can turn down anything, but unless we have them in the room to tell us what they're able to do with the resources they have, determining that one way or another gets a lot more difficult. That was part of the reason why trying to keep that element in is just to put all options in front of us, because we can't continue down the road we have. Everybody's in agreement on that. I mean, and maybe I can ask Dan this, if a third-party vendor, whether it's keeping staff or not, however that's written in, well, maybe Dimitri, does our 25% portion, can it maintain the building and cover that side of things? But if they were able to use the building and all, whether they gain money or lose money, if that was all on the third-party vendor's plate and we merely keep ownership of the building, is that something that's possible?
What you're really, I think what you're kind of heading towards is almost like a lease arrangement in a way,
Yeah.
where they would take that bottom line risk and then you'd figure that out. I will say this, in the event center space, that is really relatively rare, frankly. And one of the downsides of that type of relationship is when like, let's say it was all of us and we said we're going to take that risk on and we're going to sort of guarantee, let's say, a lease payment or something, we're going to want a lot of control at that point, right, over programming and all sorts of things. And so there's a dynamic there that would be important to consider. I will just say this, generally in the public assembly space, that is rare, what you're talking about.
Okay.
I guess, go ahead, Commissioner.
I guess to that point, I think too that takes it a step further in the arena. I think that it has been talked about where we're nervous about what happens with employees and that sort of thing. If you lean to the direction of you're essentially renting them the building, like in that scenario, I can't imagine that any of the employees are retained by the city or anything like that. So I guess I definitely lean more towards having an authority. I understand where Commissioner Zenker's coming from, like that you can give that authority the power to rehire a director, to establish those KPIs, that sort of thing. The one reason I maybe lean towards doing the authority with a third-party management is that, to Commissioner Rish's point, then that management fills that role, and you're hiring a third-party management team that already has an understanding of what those KPIs and incentives look like because they're already doing it in other spaces. I would be interested in the concept of, if you do that third-party management, what does it look like keeping staff as city staff, or how does it work, like Dan was saying, with like maybe that long-term staff that, you know, has a lot of years put into their pension and that sort of thing. I would be more interested in like seeing what that looks like, and if we could get there with still using a third-party management to kind of get everything under control and rolling and moving in that new direction, because I think that they're potentially more capable of doing it, and doing it in a quicker manner than like bringing one person in as a director and expecting them to be able to do this like list of stuff that's handed to them. I guess that feels like a way longer process to me. Not to say that it couldn't be successful, but I think that the third-party management, that RFP would be designed for companies that are already doing this, already have an understanding of it, and then our authority board would present them with the KPIs and the kind of restrictions, whether it be like an expectation of types of events and all of that sort of stuff, and they already have an understanding of how to move forward from there. I think, like Commissioner Risch says, that's a lot to put on one person, and I don't know if even the job description sets you up for success in that way, so obviously that would need some work, but I think that I definitely lean towards having that authority board one way or the other versus just like the concept of renting the space out to a third party where it's just us hiring a third party, which I don't think was really the suggestion in the first place, but.
So question for you, I guess we'll put you on the spot, assuming we would continue down the path using you, Dan. Timeline, if we were going to develop the process to establish the authority board, and then maybe two options, or I'll throw two out, and if others want to add, they can, but one option would be then help develop the job description for a director that is totally city employed, along with all the rest of the staff. And the second option I'm thinking of, and it's kind of where my head has been for a while, but is that third-party vendor is really the GM or director, but all the staff stays with the event center and with the city, and how that could work, if it can. That's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Maybe
I think
maybe it's a loaded question.
Right, it is, a little bit. I mean, instead of giving you an exact timeline, the one thing I think would be good here is some of the things that have been raised. A good example was the notion of really what's the, how do we protect, I'm going to use this word protect, but how do we really look at this sort of question of the employees and, what are the options there? I think that exploration should be part of this. So we can really make sure that there's is there an opportunity there, which, again, we talking to, the city HR team and everybody else trying to sort of think through that question. And then I think we can move pretty quickly on, getting to a point where we're back and sort of reporting out on, Mayor, what you just talked about, setting it up so that that everybody can sort of look at it and kind of make a true directional decision, if you will, if that's what you're sort of leading to. I think we can move pretty quickly and get that back to the commission.
Okay, well, I threw those out. It came from me, so I don't know if anybody else thinks anywhere along that line. Commissioner Conley.
I just want to clarify a bit. If the goal is community benefit, like keeping heads in the beds and so on, doesn't necessarily even have to be a rent scenario. If they're utilizing the building and we maintain the building because it's our asset or whatnot, is within their business model, can you figure it, whether it's retaining employees or not, does that create enough space to make it possible to where it can springboard into a business plan that's workable for the city?
So I know where you're.
Like say a transaction fee or whatnot.
I think I know where you're headed, Commissioner. I don't see, again, I think I said it to start with, the event center itself, although I would love it to not, right now, probably the annual shortfall, let's just say, is $500,000. I'd love it to not be that much. I'd love it to be less than that, but it's probably never going to be zero or a positive. It's probably, it is an event center, and it's there to drive economic value for the community by attracting people to come in. The only way we'd probably get that building, as I said earlier, to be cash flowing is if we just said, Company B, you're renting the whole thing, and I don't care how you're going to do it. You're going to pay us a lease. Commissioner Zinker.
I'll expand on that a little bit because when I was first elected, a nice gentleman him and I had he had coffee, I had orange juice because I don't drink coffee. Because could you imagine me on coffee?
Oh, gosh.
So we had a nice conversation. He handed me a piece of paper, had all these numbers on the bottom of this piece of paper was a large dollar amount for a convention center space. And I was, kind of taken back because it was a big number. I just looked at him. I said, if a convention center space was such a positive business and 5 people could put that thing up and it would generate revenue, you wouldn't need the city to build it, right? And it's the same thing here with our event center. If it would generate revenue, you wouldn't need it to be city-owned. Grand Forks, they have a funding source for capital improvements, sales tax dollars. I don't remember what that percentage is. Fargo has the same thing. We don't have a dedicated funding source other than our bed and booze tax to make capital improvements. And that's all it can be used for is capital improvements.
Yep.
They can use those sales tax dollars for operating funds. If we had a mechanism like that in place, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, and we wouldn't have as much deferred maintenance in that building as we have. So
I'm not going to disagree with that.
I put that out there for more of my soapbox things. But your first scenario that you talked about with the authority, having that, a director and that. And then to build on that, I look out at the crowd. There's a lot of event center staff here. And I bet if they all raise their hand who worked for the event center prior to this storm that has gone through that building in the last 24 months, I bet their turnover is less than other departments within our city. And that's the people that that's the team that we need to celebrate, because they held that thing together for all this time and made sure that this event center ran. Now, we all know they had bumps and bruises. They're doing things, and you're right, Mayor. We would love it if it would not lose money, but we have to understand the expectation. And for me or us at this commission to turn our back on them, who have weathered the storm and been there every day when they have to probably work 17 or 18 or 25 days in a row because they have those events, I'm not going to do that to them. It's not going to happen under.
Commissioner Risch.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we keep talking about, it's lost $500,000 a year here, there, or the other. But I don't think we consider the additional sales tax revenue generated when people come in from out of town, out of state, attend these things, and that actually benefits the city, that additional sales tax money or lodging taxes and things of that nature. I don't think we really get that all into the equation.
It's not, but it's part of the KPIs that need to be developed, that because what we need to be able, my view, it's my vision, we need to be able to start attracting more people to come in. It's not that we aren't doing it now, but we need to be able to attract more people to come into the community who are going to spend money staying overnight at a hotel. Do we have some struggles there? Not going to deny that. We know we have some struggles there. In fact, we have a proposal to come forward in a few weeks. Maybe talk about some of that. That might help. That also changes the dynamics. But, I think my struggle here is not that we don't have a great bunch of employees, and I am all on board how we be able to maintain that group of employees. That's why throughout the hybrid of two routes: director as an employee, and B, because I'm a little concerned whether or not we'll be able to hire a director. Can we hire the third party just for that position, but then they have a team who is helping bring it in? I don't know if that's even possible.
Well, the benefit of the third-party contractor that's already doing these things, they have relationships with promoters, they have networks, and they'll have some big event going one place that could maybe stop at our city in the next place. So that's the attraction for me for a third party.
Again, I kind of hybrided it. I tried to carve it out, and that's probably unique from it's not any of the models directly shown to us. Commissioner Conley.
I've had through this whole discussion people to say that they could step into the third-party space, that they think that they could do it. Do we have to put it in an RFQ and RFP? Can they just come and present to us, say, in this format, and throw everything they want to on the table, or does it have to go through?
We need to go through the process.
Okay.
Yeah. It would not be, that would be potentially just handing business to somebody who knew somebody.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Multiple, probably,
Yeah.
sections.
then why take it off the table on the front? Why not?
We
just
don't
offer
have
it?
to, I just threw it out
Okay,
there.
yeah.
I was just trying to, I was trying to feel Dan out in JLL, what the timeline would look like and what they could do to help us, so we could maybe get to so it's down to a decision tree,
Okay.
is all I was looking for. I don't think we're gonna come to a decision tonight. This is what we could, but I was envisioning exactly what's happening tonight, because this is an important discussion. So. Other thoughts, commissioners?
You want to take some action?
You can take, yeah, I mean, if, we do whatever we want, we're in a meeting. From an action standpoint. To the agenda, but yeah, excuse me. Thank you for correcting me.
I guess if you want a motion on this, I would move that we like pursue the next steps of trying to like lean on JLL and see what it would look like if we move forward with the authority model with a third-party management, and whether or not, like, what it looks like as far as keeping staff or how that would relate to staff in that role. I want to see like what that looks like, if there is kind of like a Model 2A, so to speak. And like, to me, that's like the next step before we like lock in that we want to do that. Like what the next step of building that authority board is, and then also within that, like, is there a version of the third party where staff either remain city staff or we have some control over how that flow from city staff to private staff goes?
Does it need to be a motion, or
Can we
have
just,
consensus on that?
I think we could have consensus, but I would like to have, I personally would like to also see the model with the director and a job description as well.
Sure.
I'd feel I need more than one choice.
so if we could pursue more information on that authority board and what it looks like with a director and public staff, as well as like third-party management, but staff potentially remaining public.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what I was envisioning, but I'm not trying to,
Sure.
see if
I think
others
that's
are.
the next step in my head, is like we got to figure out how either of those would function.
Commissioner Rish?
I think what you're talking about is Authority Model 1 and Authority Model 2.
Yes.
So we just agree to pursue those two.
But with the potential of how Model 2 retains the public employees.
Right. If that's,
Well,
if
sure.
that's a possibility
Sure,
within
sure.
Model 2.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a motion if there's just
Doesn't,
consensus on
I mean,
that.
if we all generally agree that's a next step, I think, I will have to ask Dan if that's something you can start to work on.
We can. I was going to say that I think that this is all really great. I mean, this is exactly what we need to, this is sort of the process we need to go through to make sure whatever direction, it's really kind of our direction collectively. So I think this is great, and we're happy to keep moving through this.
And then I would, as part of that authority model, or the authority board, like, help us develop the criteria for those. 'Cause
Yep.
I do agree with Commissioner Zinker that the city administrator needs to be one member and the portfolio holder needs to be another member, and then there's 5 from the public at large with the appropriate skill sets.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you can also, just to jump in, I mean, you could have the portfolio holder and the administrator not be a voting, right?
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
gotta have that relationship between administration and the event center, and then you gotta have that relationship between the commission
Yeah.
and
Very,
that,
very much like our parking authority operates today.
or RZ or whatever. Yep.
Okay, are we generally okay with that, everyone? Okay. Well, thank you, this has been a great discussion, I think, and we're, take one step forward at least.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yep,
We'll keep moving.
yep. Okay, moving to the capital improvement plan. And I gotta find my stuff now. So, we heard from Jeff last week, and then I believe we have a handout that should have come out that actually is from our finance department, just trying to lay out what the cash flow would look like based upon those particular potential timelines for reinvesting into our facility, but just to get it out, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to come up if you don't mind. I have a question. Because I believe in retaining facilities as much as we can and I won't say repurposing them, but keep them in good shape. If we had to replicate this building in another space in town, ballpark number, what that would be?
Oh, that's a good question, because you probably would build it bigger than what it is now, undoubtedly. And so if I use the Alaris Center as an example, because it's equivalent, that's a 450,000 square foot building. I think you could easily say from a starting perspective for the building itself, you're in the $450 million range
Okay.
without site and land.
Thank you. That's really what I was looking for, because that tells me why it's so important to take and invest some dollars in our facility that's currently existing, because that would be putting a half a billion dollar liability on our citizens. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, Commissioners, are there questions you have for Mr. Ubel? So what are your thoughts? Commissioner Risch?
Well, my only thoughts are the financing end of it, and I see these charts that Dimitri's put together, and it looks like we're gonna, if we go ahead with this, we deficit spend at 27, 28, 29, and then things start coming around again.
Yep.
We feel pretty secure about those numbers, Dimitri?
Well, go ahead, Dimitri. I won't speak for you.
Mayor, Commissioners, I think, Mayor, you can answer that question if you want to.
Okay, well, the first thing is these are. He's the guy. Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of conversations with Dimitri on this. So.
I'll go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, I will just say, Mayor, Commissioners, Commissioner Risch, honestly, the dip is basically going to use reserves in another fund, and will just get replenished over time. So that, for me, is not from a financial health of the liquor, lodging, and restaurant tax. That is not a concern, because I know it's going to get paid back over time. And in the meantime, we're going to have probably some cost savings, and I'll let the mayor and Jeff, Mr. Ubel, kind of talk about that. In terms of like doing this project sooner than later, and it's probably more beneficial, more cost effective than waiting to do it over the long period of time, because of maybe worrying about the cash flow of one particular fund, because we do have cash across a lot of funds in the city that could be borrowed. The money could be borrowed from the other funds in order to complete this project, and then replenished once the liquor, lodging, and restaurant tax is collected over time. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, is this based on like $17 million or whatever the number Jeff came up with?
So the chart was based upon using the projected estimated cost that would be spent in each particular year if we chose the route of taking care of the critical needs first, and based upon just how the timeline would go. So knowing that we're not going to take the HVAC and do all of that in 1 year, so we aren't going to spend $15 million in year one. We're going to spend it in 2 to 3 years in increments. So that's what gives us the comfort, knowing that we have the funding available to ultimately do that. And when we first asked Mr. Ubel to do this after the commission agreed to it, my first question to him is, like, I want to take care of the facility. We need to take care of what's there, and that's not expansion, because expansion is not, we got to just take care of the facility, because it's a great facility, and it's got great bones. But if we don't take care of this HVAC system, as an example, and Commissioner Zinker could even speak to it a little bit, it's a ticking time bomb waiting for us to have an emergency. And so that's where Jeff went as he developed that. And then the rest of it, when it comes, I said, we got to make sure we're also take care of things that are important from a visual perspective, because the HVAC is not something we can touch and feel. It's going to make everybody more comfortable, because we'll get air conditioning into places we don't have air conditioning working very well right now, if at all. But we need those consumer touchy-feely type things, so that's the wayfinding, which is an easy number to, maybe we can get that one done soon. The other thing I asked was, let's make sure we don't spend all that tax revenue, because we know we're gonna have somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000, at least while we're getting the building back up to speed, on things that are gonna come up that we need to attack and take care of right away, or there might be some small items we can knock off the list from the back end. So that's how it was developed. And then, once Jeff and his team put that together, then I said, Dimitri, I gotta make sure it's gonna work. Run it through your financial model, and that's where these charts came from. Commissioner Clary.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess to Dimitri's point, when we're talking from the financial standpoint, it's not the only instance where the city borrows from the city as we're waiting for those funds to increase. And the liquor and lodging restaurant tax fund, it's a very stable thing. It tricks up a little bit. It's never up and way down or anything like that. So, well, during COVID, hopefully we're not doing that ever again. But I think, so this model where we dip in and we're negative in our reserves and wait for it to come back up is not something I have any major concern about, just because of how that fund functions from year to year. So I guess if that's reassuring.
And I also said, I do not want to borrow money from outside. I just don't want to do that. It doesn't make sense to me, and it would be a bad message. Because that means that we're short on taxes and revenue, and that's not the situation. So,
Mayor, Commissioners, make one comment.
sure.
Just to make sure, for the public's actually sake, I just want to point out that the liquor, lodging, restaurant tax is a 1% tax on those three things I just mentioned, and they only can be used for capital purchases related to the event center. So I just, based on North Dakota's Century Code. So I just want to make that clear for everybody present and in the public.
So, would you like to move forward in a manner to start to accomplish some of this?
You need a motion?
This, I think so we have A, do we want to move forward? And B, we probably need to come with okay, now I got to ask Jeff, what was the terminology you recommend? Because I think this might be a longer term process. We probably need an RFP actually to secure that particular component first.
Yeah,
Similar to what we have at the airport.
Yeah, I think what you're referencing, Mayor, is the indefinite quantities, indefinite delivery contract. We had recommended issuing an RFP using that strategy, just simply because then you'll have continuity over at least the early years of implementing the CIP.
And so the first step would be to do that RFP. And then we would then once that is awarded, that person or that entity would then begin the process of developing the plans for whatever approach we took.
I would close. Yeah,
What'd you say?
eight to
Didn't get the
10 months would probably be the design window.
Yeah. Which is why we got to, if we're going to try to attack it, I think we need to start making some movement. So that would,
I'll make a motion to approve that we enter into that RFP for similar to the airport. Jason, you got that?
Yes, sir.
Second.
is there any further discussion? Hear none, we'll call roll.
Commissioner Conley,
No.
Commissioner Zinker,
Yes.
Commissioner Cleary,
Yes.
Commissioner Risch,
Yes.
Mayor Schmitz.
Yes. There's nothing else on our agenda, so we are adjourned. I want to thank everyone. It's been a good discussion, I think.